So question number 9 of mutual fund. Who will not remember this sum? This sum had come in FR as well as in SFM a number of times. But whenever it had come in the past, they had always given us the date of investment and asked us to calculate the effective yield per annum. But in this question, effective yield is given. Can you see the last thing in the table? Effective yield per annum is given. And main thing is that they are wanting us to calculate the date of investment. On which date did we invest? Okay. So understand the logic. If we calculate the holding period yield equal to dividend per unit plus the change in NAV divided by the beginning NAV into 100. If we calculate the holding period yield and we have the effective annual yield, so holding period yield divided by effective annual yield is the proportion of the period we held, no? HPY divided by the effective yield is the proportion. Suppose if it is 0.25, that means I held the mutual fund for 0.25 of the year. Now they have given 1 year is 365 days. So it's HPY divided by effective yield, the whole into 365. Understood? First understand the process. HPY divided by effective yield, the whole into 100. For example, mutual fund X, if I get the holding period yield as say 3%. So in that case, the holding period yield is 3%, but the effective annual yield is 9.66%. So I'll do 3 divided by 9.66, the whole into 365, that number of days. And then that number of days, I will go backward from 31st March 2018. And that will give me the date of my investment. Now that's the philosophy. For those who are conceptually sound, they will listen to the philosophy first rather than trying to go hither and thither. Now, so there are 3 schemes X, Y and Z. We are given the amount of investment 2 lakh, 4 lakh, 2 lakh. NAV is given at the time of purchase. So if you divide the investment amount by NAV, you will get the number of units 2 lakh by 10.3, 4 lakh by 10.1, 2 lakh by 10. So the first question, number of units in each scheme is a gift. The first question, number of units they have asked to calculate is a gift because 2 lakh divided by 10.3, 4 lakh by 10 and 2 lakh divided by 10.2. Correct? Now, then they are asking the total NPV. There was a mistake over there. They wanted to ask total NAV, net asset value. That means the ending value. Okay. So ending value is the number of units into the ending NAV. That's so easy. You have calculated the number of units right now. You multiply it by 10.25, multiply it by 10, multiply by 10.2. That's ending NAV. Okay. Third question, total yield. Now the word total is given and yield is given. Yield is a percentage and total means across the 3 fund. Okay, so how should we do it? See, we are getting a dividend of 6,000 from MFX. I'm showing you the question only. I'm not showing the solution. You are getting 6,000 and you already got an ending NAV in question number 2. Deduct 2 lakh from that. So that's the capital gain or loss. The ending NAV minus the initial amount invested is the capital gain or loss. Add the dividend amount. That's the total yield in rupee terms. Same for MFY. The dividend is 0. So the ending yield which you got, ending NAV in question number 2, second part, minus the 4 lakh, that is the capital gain. That itself is the total yield in rupee terms. And for the third one, 5,000 is the dividend. And you calculate the ending NAV minus the 2 lakh investment. You get the total amount in rupee terms. Add the total amount. You'll get the total amount from all the 3 funds. Divide by 8 lakh into 100. Divide by 8 lakh into 100. You can't annualize it because the 3 schemes have been held for different periods. So you can't annualize it. Okay. So that's the third part. Fourth part is like number of days of investment. I told you what should you do? You should find out the holding period yield for MFX, which can be easily calculated either via per unit. If you want to do per unit wise, then you have to divide 6,000 by the number of units. You will get the dividend per unit. So dividend per unit plus ending NAV 10.25 minus the beginning NAV 10.3 divided by the beginning NAV 10.3 into 100. You'll get the HPY. That HPY divided by 9.66 is the proportion of the year. That into 365 is the number of days we held. So you go backward from 365 days and you will able to find out the days. And if you don't want to do it per unit wise, it's okay. You already got the ending NAV in second part. Deduct the 2 lakh. Okay, so you get the capital gain and you got the 6,000, that's the dividend. Okay, in fact, you got the total yield in rupee terms while solving question number 3. So total yield divided by 2 lakh into 100, that's the HPY. So HPY divided by 9.66, that's into 365. Similarly for MFY, similarly for MFZ, you'll get the number of days of holding. Now go backward from 31st March. Everybody knows how to count days, and you'll be able to find out the date on which investment was made. Okay, very good sum. The sum can repeat itself. The sum can come once again. And in fact, this is the sum where people felt that it is from the practice manual. Those who had mugged up the practice manual, they felt, oh, it's the practice manual. But they went inside the sum and they could not solve. Okay, that was the status because people just mug up now. So mugging up will not do. Now let's come to question number 10. Now question number 10 is a special sum. Please mark it very, very important. This is on the concept of dividend equalization. There is no sum comparable to this sum. You got to ensure that you have done it nicely. I have done it in class. I have done the sum in class. I am once again redoing it, though I should leave it because since it's done in class, there is no sense in doing it. But I am once again included it so that you don't make a mistake. So first of all, I will look at the question, okay, whole, and then I will discuss the concept behind the solution, concept, okay. And then I will show you the solution and walk through the solution. Is it okay? So let's see. On 1st Jan 2020, an open-ended scheme of mutual fund had outstanding units of 300 lakh with a NAV of 20.25. Perfect. At the end of Jan, after 1 month, it had issued 5 lakh units at opening NAV plus a load of 2% adjusted for dividend equalization. Now, what should surprise you is that at the end of Jan, why are we issuing 5 lakh units at the opening NAV? We should issue 5 lakh units at the NAV at the end of Jan, no? But they're issuing the NAV at the opening NAV. And therefore, adjustment for dividend equalization. That means whatever income is earned in Jan, please have a look below. Income earned in Jan is 24 lakhs. Now, this income was earned prior to the 5 lakh units which were issued. So this person who is buying 5 lakh units should also pay proportionately. Na? So 24 lakh belong to 3 lakh units. So if you calculate 24 divided by 300, let me do that. 24 divided by 300, that comes to 0.08. So this person who is coming to buy 5 lakh units, he should be charged an additional 5 into 0.08, that is 0.4 lakh. 5 into 0.08, that is 0.4 lakh should be charged from him, because why would he be entitled to receive this income even though he was not a part of the fund when this income took place? I think this is totally logical. Okay, 5 into 0.08, that is 0.4 lakh. Okay, so 0.4 lakh gets collected by the fund. Okay, and obviously the entire amount that we charge from the investor is what? 20.25, the opening NAV plus 2% that you can calculate. Let me calculate that for you. 20.25 into, I can do 1.02. Okay, that's for the load. 20.65. 20.65, and then we have also calculated 0.08 plus 0.08, which is 20.735. 20.735 is my answer. If you look at the question, in the second question they've asked issue price at the end of Jan, that is 20.735. Now this is verbal because the opening NAV plus load adjusted for dividend equalization, that means the income earned in Jan, he has to pay for it. No? So 24 by 300, that's the per unit income. 20.735, my answer for the second part is complete. Okay. At the end of Feb, it had repurchased 2.5 lakh units at opening NAV less 2% exit load adjusted for dividend equalization. Now, somebody is leaving at the end of Feb. So that person ideally should be receiving 2.5 lakh into the NAV at the end of Feb. But once again, they are saying no, opening NAV less 2% exit load adjusted for dividend equalization. So please understand, if you remember in my verbal talks right now, the 0.08 that we calculated as the income and the 0.4 lakh on the whole, okay, the 0.08 that we calculated per unit, now that is going to change because now we have 305 lakh units. 305 lakh units. And what is the income? We had the income of 24 lakhs. That is the income for Jan. Okay. And we also collected 0.4 lakh from this guy who came in Jan. So 24.4 lakhs. And then we have 36 lakh income in Feb. This 36 lakh will be divided by 305. This 36 lakh will be divided by 305. Let me see what's coming to. 36 divided by 305. This is coming to 0.118. So 0.118 will also be added. Okay, so we had 0.08 and 0.118 gets added to it. 0.118 gets added to it. Now that is the entire thing, the dividend equalization amount which the person will get when he is leaving, because he is entitled to the income of Jan and Feb. He is entitled to income of Jan is 0.08 per unit. Income of Feb is 0.18 per unit. 0.118 per unit. So he is entitled to 0.08 plus 0.118. Okay. He will get that much extra adjusted for dividend equalization. Understood? So that calculation is easy. At the end of March, it had distributed 70% of available income. See, available income is obviously the entire thing that we are earning. January income, February income, March income. Okay. And the portfolio, 24 lakh, 36 lakh, 47 lakh. All these are available income, and also the amounts that we are collecting in between. Okay, so that part has to be solved, and he's getting 70% of available income. Okay, so question is, so I think the second part and the third part you must have totally understood. There is no issue with it. Even the second part I calculated, and third part is understood. 0.08, 0.118, that's the dividend equalization amount. Okay. It is the first part, income available for distribution, that requires a table, and the last part, closing value of NAV on 31st March, is common sense. Okay, so let's go to the solution of the first part. So look at the solution of the first part, please. They have made 3 columns. One is for units, the other is per unit, the third column is total. Now many a times the total amount is known first and then we are getting per unit, and sometimes the per unit amount is known, then we are getting total. So be very flexible between the last 2 columns. For example, income from Jan. Now income from Jan is 24 lakhs, last column. How many units we have? 300. So I calculated a 24 by 300, 0.08. Now we collected dividend equalization on that person who came to buy 5 lakh units. So 5 lakh into 0.08, 0.4. This also I calculated. So now we have 305 lakh units and the income is 0.08 per unit, that is 24.4 lakh. Income from Feb gets added, 36 lakh in the last column, and that's divided by 305.118. I calculated this also. So you have 305 lakh units at 0.198 per unit of income and 60.4 lakh the total income. So now we have to pay this person 0.198, now the person who is leaving. So 2.5 lakh, we paid dividend equalization 0.198, that is 0.495 lakhs to him. So we are left with 302.5 lakh units at 0.198. And then we add the income from March, okay. And after adding that, we deduct the dividend paid. So dividend paid is obviously 70% of the income, that is 70% of 106.905. Okay, I hope you are looking at the solution. That is 70% of 0.3534. So that gives us the income available for distribution is 106.905 lakhs, what they've asked. Income available for distribution is 106.905 lakhs. So they've calculated last. We have 302.5 on which dividend equalization is 0.106 and 32.0715. But I think the answer is 106.905. It's quite surprising that they have not highlighted the answer, because the question was income available for distribution. It should be 106.905. Okay. I have already discussed the second part, the issue price in Jan, and I have also discussed the third part, that is the repurchase price in Feb. So the last part was how to calculate the ending NAV. That's very easy. Start with the opening NAV. Let's look into the solution. So the opening NAV is 300 lakh units into 20.25. Look at the solution, please. The value appreciation, it's given. We issue fresh units, 5 lakh units at what price? We calculated in second part. Then income received in Jan, Feb, March, less the units redeemed, okay, at the end of Feb, less income redistributed, distributed. So we get the closing net asset value divided by the number of units. You get the NAV per unit. That's simple. Very important sum. Please do it nicely. Okay, question number 11. Now question number 11 जो है is dividend reinvestment plan and bonus plan. So the first misprinting is that उसपे dividend plan लिखा हुआ है. That's wrong on the part of ICI. It is dividend reinvestment plan. Okay. So what can we do about it? You can do nothing about it. You got to know that when this type of sum comes, when I say this type, you know which type. Okay, we had done question number 1 or 2, I think, on dividend reinvestment plan and bonus and growth plan. So accordingly, you should be aware. So in this question, this is on back calculation. This is how the the institute is twisting the questions. Like you will feel that you have done it in the practice manual, but no, in the practice manual, something else was there. Here, something else is there. If you don't have common sense, if you have just mugged up the past solution, you'll not be able to do it. Anyways, let's see. So Messrs Corpus and AMC on 1st April 2015 floated two schemes: dividend reinvestment plan, bonus plan. Mr. X, an investor, has invested in both the schemes. The following details except the issue price are available. So the issue price is not given. You can see the question mark in the table, correct? So 1st April 2015 the story starts and the story ends on 31st March 2020. 1st April 15, 31st March 20. That's exactly 5 years. That's good. So you can see the dividend percentage is given. Of course, they are to be applied on the face value of 10. Okay, so we have 1.2 dividend per unit, 1 dividend per unit and 1.5 dividend per unit. And the bonus is 1:4, 1:5, which everybody knows. The last NAV is very important, 49 and 44. That will come to use. Now I am going below. Let's see. Now second table is given where it's given the amount invested in the two schemes was 9,20,000 and the 10 lakh respectively. Average profit, that means profit divided by number of years, is 27,748 in scheme 1. So we can multiply it by 5 to get the total profit. And it is, in the case of scheme 2, it is 6.4% average yield, which means 6.4 into 5. That's the total yield over 5 years. You are required to calculate the issue price of both the schemes as on 1st April 2015. Okay, so let's start. So if we come to the first thing, in the first scheme, that is the dividend plan, please multiply the profit by 5. What's the profit given? The profit given is 27,748.6. We multiply it by 5. We get 1,38,743. I'm doing it on the calci. 1,38,743. This is the total profit. Let's add the profit to 9,20,000, the initial investment amount. So I'm adding 9,20,000. So in that case, I am getting 10,58,743. You must also be getting, if you are doing on the calci, 10,58,743. So 10,58,743 is the redemption amount at the rate of 49, which is the ending NAV. Let's divide by 49. I'm dividing it by 49. So I'm getting the ending units, which is 21,607. 21,607 units, ending units. Okay. Please understand, these are the ending units, not the units purchased initially, but the units purchased initially plus the units received from dividend reinvestment. So 21,607 comprises of the initial units and the units received from reinvestment. If we can find out the initial units, then the solution is simple because the amount invested was 9,20,000. And if you divide by the initial units, you will get the NAV. Perfect. So we have 21,607 units at the end. Now, let's go backwards. Dividend was announced on 31st March 2019. I hope you are looking at the question. I am not looking at the solution at all. It's just calci based. It's like a CAT paper that you are giving. If anybody has aspirations to sit for MBA entrance examination, it is a question of that type. So on 31st March 19, you got a 1.5 dividend per unit, 15%. And the NAV was 45. NAV was 45. So that means you were able to get dividend of 1.5 and invest at 45 so that the value became 46.5. The units were worth 46.5, correct? Think about it. NAV is 45. You got dividends on 1.5, reinvested at 45 to become a value of 46.5. Think about it. So if I divide 21,607 by 46.5, 21,607 divide by 46.5 and I multiplied by 45. I multiplied by 45. If you want to learn it as a formula, the cum dividend units, CUM, cum dividend units multiplied by NAV before dividend divided by NAV plus dividend. I repeat, the cum dividend unit multiplied by NAV before dividend divided by NAV plus dividend. So 21,607 into 45 by 46.5, that's coming to 20,910. 20,910 units we got before 31st March 2019. Let's go to the previous date, 31st March 18. There's a 10%, 1 rupee dividend. And what's the NAV? 50. So the calculation is of 51. So let's do the units that we got, 20,910 into 50 by 51. Into 50 by 51. We are getting 20,500 units. So 20,500 units we had before 31st March 18. Let's come to 31st March 17. On that day, dividend is 1.2 and NAV is 48. So it's 48 plus 1.2, 49.2. So 20,500 into 48 by 49.2. 20,500 into 48 by 49.2, that comes to 20,000. Perfect. So 20,000 units we purchased initially by investing 9,20,000. So what was the issue price? 9,20,000 divided by 20,000. 9,20,000 divided by 20,000, that is coming to 46. 46 is the answer. I don't like X and all that. I can solve by algebra. Let the units be X initially. So we got 1.2X dividend. We invested at 48. So the units became X plus 1.2X by 48 and so on. I can do by algebra. But I know that most CA students will not like algebra. If they liked algebra, they could have better gone into actuarial science and so on and so forth. Let's come to the second plan, bonus plan. In the bonus plan, the average yield is 6.4%. That means per annum. So 6.4 into 5. That's 32%. So 32% of 10 lakh is 3,20,000. 3,20,000 plus 10 lakh, 13,20,000. So 13,20,000 divided by 44, ending NAV. 13,20,000 divided by 44. That's 30,000. So 30,000 units we have at the end. There's no question of speed. When you are doing maths, it should come out 30,000 units. Now let's go backtrack. There was a 1:5 bonus. That means whoever had 5 units, they got one more unit. That means it became 6 units. So let's reverse it to become 5. So 30,000 into 5 by 6. 30,000 into 5 by 6 is 25,000 units. Similarly, 1:4 bonus. So 25,000 into 4 by 5. 25,000 into 4 by 5, that's 20,000 units. So initial 20,000 units, 10 lakh by 20,000. 10 lakh by 20,000. So this is coming to 50. Okay, 50. So 50 was the NAV. So the answer for the dividend reinvestment plan is 46 and that for bonus plan is 50. I have not seen the solution. I'm just speaking out through my calci and you should also be catching hold. Sir, but you talked about presentation. Yes, I spoke about presentation. So after you know the solution, look at the institute's presentation. Then you know your brain doesn't have to work upon the substance. You know the substance. You can then maneuver the presentation as per ICAI. Yes, follow their presentation. Yes, 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 yes. Follow their presentation. But apply your brains. Okay, thank you. So let's move to question number 12. Question number 12 is a beautiful sum. This sum also has a conceptual mistake. Although I bet that nobody, when I say nobody, I mean nobody has been able to identify that conceptual mistake. And maybe if I'm a smart teacher, I should not point out that mistake. But I'm sorry, I'm not smart in that sense. When it is a case of knowledge, I will definitely point out the flaw, the mistake, because the purpose we are doing a CA is not to just pass the exam, but for the purpose of our holistic knowledge. So I'll point out where the mistake is, although the mistake is so subtle that you're not supposed to highlight in the exam that there's a mistake. Okay, let's go through the sum. Two mutual funds, D and K, each having closed-ended equity schemes. NAV as on 31st December of D is 70.71, of which 99% equity, remaining cash. Let's find out the split up. So 70.71 into 99%. That is 70.0029. That's the equity component. I'm just writing it down. Okay. And what's the cash component? 70.71 into 1%. This is 0.7071. I'm also writing it down. So I've written the equity component. I've written the cash component. Then we have K mutual fund whose NAV is 62.5. 96% is equity. So 62.5 into 96%. That is 60. I'm writing it down. And 62.5 into 4% is 2.5, which is cash. I'm writing it down. Okay, I will not remember these written down figures. Please remember, I have written down 4 figures. The equity component of fund D, which is 70.0029. The cash component of fund D, which is 0.7071. The equity component of fund K, which is 60. And the equity component of the cash component of fund K, which is 2.5. Correct. Let me read further. Following is the other information. So we are given the Sharpe ratio, Trenor ratio, standard deviation. Sharpe ratio is excess return to SD. Trenor ratio is excess return to beta. And SD is given. So if Sharpe ratio is given, SD is given, We can cross multiply and calculate the excess return. So for fund D, 2 into 11.25, 2 into 11.25, which is 22.5% is the excess return. And we know what is Trenner ratio. It's excess return divided by beta. Now that's equal to 15. So beta must be excess return by 15. So I'm dividing 22.5 by 15. I'm getting 1.5. So I'm writing down beta of fund D is 1.5. Beta of fund D is 1.5, correct? Let's do for fund K. So 3.3 into 5, that's the excess return, which is coming to 16.5 divided by 15. Divided by 15. And we get 1.1 as the beta of fund K. So once again, what's the beta of fund D? It is 1.5 and the beta of fund K is 1.1. Perfect. There is no change in the portfolios during the next month and annual average cost is 3 per unit for the scheme. So annual cost is 3. So the per unit cost is 0.25. Per month cost is 0.25. Per month cost. Okay, I'll need it later. If share market goes down by 5% within a month, calculate expected NAV after a month for both the schemes of the mutual fund. For calculation, consider 12 months in a year. Ignore number of days in a month. Thank you. So, share market has gone down by 5%. The fund must have fallen. Okay, we know the beta of the fund. So, ideally, we know, for example, the beta of fund D is 1.5. So, what does beta mean? Beta means that if the market goes down by 1%, the fund or the stock goes down by 1.5%. So logically, we should multiply 5 with 1.5. We get 7.5%. That is, the fund D will fall by 7.5%. Now 7.5% of what? The total NAV or the share NAV or the cash NAV? The total NAV or the share NAV or the cash NAV. You take an interview of all the students doing CA final and all the teachers, all the so-called teachers teaching finance in CA final, and ask them that 7.5% will be reduction in what? The share part or the cash part or both? They will say share part. Because obviously, sir, cash cannot fall. Now, this is stupidity of the highest level. Why? Let me explain. Sorry, I'm taking 2 more minutes. Leave the figures of this sum and just think that you have a mutual fund which has 90 lakhs shares. 90 lakhs shares with a beta of 2 and 10 lakh in cash. Correct? With a beta of 0. 90 lakh shares, the beta of 2 and 10 lakh cash. If I ask you to find out the beta of the overall mutual fund, what will you say? 90 into 2 plus 10 into 0 divided by 100. 90 into 2 plus 10 into 0 divided by 100. What does it come? 1.8. So 1.8 incorporates the entire beta of 100, not 90. Now if the market falls by 5%, you have 2 options. Either you use the beta of 2, that is the share beta, and you say that, sir, the share part will fall by 5 into 10%. So 10% on 99 lakh, the fund will fall. So 100 minus 9, that is 91 lakh shall be the net asset value. Perfect. Or if you want to use 1.8 beta, then you have to say 1.8. That means if the market falls by, 5%, in that case, the fund will fall by 5 into 1.8, which is 9%. And 9% of 100 is what? 9 lakhs. And once again, 91. So beta of the fund incorporates cash. I think 50% people might have understood, 50% have not understood. So forgive me for the last 2 minutes of deep discussion and let's move ahead. So fund D has a beta of 1.5. The market falls by 5%. So 7.5% fall. So we reduce the cash component by 7.5%. Okay, the cash component of fund D. So we get 92.5% of fund D's cash component. 92.5% of fund D's cash component. And we are getting 64.7527. 64.7527. Okay, is the equity component of fund D. And the cash component was already saved by us. So we add both of them up. So the 64 point something plus the cash component of 0.7071, it is 65.4598. 65.4598. 65.4598. Let's reduce the average cost, monthly cost, 0.25 because 3 was the annual. So minus 0.25, we get 65.2098. 65.2098 is the month end NAV of fund D. 65.2098. Okay, for fund K, the beta was 1.1. So when the market falls by 5, the fund K will fall by 5 into 1.1, which is 5.5%. 5.5% of what? They will do the share component. I will also follow them. It's wrong. 5.5% of the share component fund K will fall. That means 94.5% of the share component. 94.5% of the share component. And that comes to 56.7, and we add the cash component of fund K, okay, and we get 59.2. So 59.2 is the NAV less 0.25, less 0.25, 58.95, 58.95 answer. Okay, so you are doing it verbally. That should be your control. And those who don't have that control, no issues. Solve it in rough. Try to bring that control, because institute is modifying the sum. The next time what will happen, instead of SD, they will give you beta. Okay, they might give you correlation. So you can't just mug up the solution. I remember the solution. Of course, follow the presentation of the institute, but understand the logic the way I'm explaining. Thank you.